New York City Mayor Eric Adams is investigated for wrongdoing. Shouldn't they be investigating to see if he's ever done anything right? San Francisco hosts APEC, the first story in forever that starts with San Francisco hosts and doesn't end with bacteria. And the government literally wants to control your vehicle. I've heard of backseat driving, but this is ridiculous. That and more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Dwayne Johnson says multiple political parties have approached him to run for president. Johnson says they approached him one after the other in 2022 after a 2021 poll showed that 46% of Americans would vote for him should he choose to run. I have some questions about the sample group for that poll. Johnson initially said he'd be up for the challenge if it's what Americans really wanted, but now he says he's reconsidering, explaining, but then I really had to double down on this idea, and this is the truth. I've got little ones. I have 3 daughters. I know what it's like to be in an occupation that took me away. I don't want that for my little ones now. If true, this is historic, as it would mark the first time in history that The Rock actually turned down a role. You know, being a politician must suck when you'd rather be the tooth fairy. Then again, I hear they have a better dental plan. Speaking of strange people running for office, January 6th rioter Jacob Chansley, better known as Kon Shaman, has filed paperwork to run as a libertarian in Arizona's 8th congressional district. Some people are wondering if he's eligible to run. One of the reasons is because of possible 14th Amendment insurrection clause disqualifications, like the one some are trying to use against Donald Trump, though a Michigan judge sided with Trump and will allow him to remain on the ballot. But there's another reason people are concerned. Chansley was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder while in prison. But you're telling me the guy dressed like a patriotic vegan buffalo is mentally unsound? No. This is a serious problem. We can't have politicians in office with cognitive impairments. And to explain why, here's Mitch McConnell. Insightful as always, Mitch. Famous sex therapist Dr. Ruth Westheimer, known professionally as just Dr. Ruth, has been appointed New York's first loneliness ambassador, a new role intended to help address a growing loneliness epidemic. She's a great choice because if anyone has experience giving people advice on things to do when they're lonely, it's Dr. Ruth. New York Governor Kathy Hochul says studies show individuals experiencing loneliness had a 32% higher risk of dying early, and we need leaders like Dr. Ruth to help address this critical component of our mental health crisis. Hopefully Dr. Ruth can help. Although lonely folks in New York should be careful because people trying to make friends and saying the wrong thing to angry New Yorkers typically have a 90% higher risk of dying early. One New Yorker that's probably angry right now is Mayor Eric Adams. And not just because tourists are getting in the way while he's walking here. This week, the FBI seized phones and an iPad from Adams as part of a probe into the mayor. Adams is being investigated for allegedly pressuring New York Fire Department officials to sign off on the Turkish government's consulate building despite safety concerns during his mayoral campaign. At the time, he was president of the Brooklyn Borough, and authorities are investigating whether his mayoral campaign illegally took foreign money. The FBI is also looking into texts that suggest Adams helped fast-track the Turkish building's opening. At this time, according to the New York Post, multiple sources briefed on the matter say the texts don't appear to show any criminal activity. Adams is fully cooperating with the investigation, but is asking the FBI to stop details being leaked to the press. He says, "What I'm really hoping is that these periodic leaks stop. We're cooperating, we need to do this together so all the facts can come out." That's funny, because as a New Yorker, I also wish there were fewer leaks. And after the break, San Francisco officials learn about math. Welcome back. 2 San Francisco supervisors flew to Japan to learn about teaching methods for math. This was criticized as the trip was paid for with taxpayer money in the midst of San Francisco facing a $500 million budget deficit. And the supervisors have no control over school curricula. This would be like saying America needs to do something about the obesity rate in the military, so let's send some janitors to Norway. If you don't see how that adds up, maybe you need some Japanese math. This is actually the second time such a trip was taken. One of the supervisors, Myrna Melgar, justifies this by saying that Japanese teaching methods helped improve test scores over the span of 4 years. She explains, "We give the school district so much money with very little accountability, and I think this is one thing we can do to provide leadership." A free vacation provides leadership? Why stop there? Why not also throw in a spa day trip and a new dirt bike? To be fair, they didn't say they were providing good leadership, which may as well be San Francisco's motto at this point. Speaking of San Francisco, it hosted the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC Summit, where U.S. President Joe Biden met with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping. To cover this, I turn it over to friend of the show, China Uncensored's Chris Chappell. Thanks, America Uncovered's Chris Chappell. Biden says he believes the best way to manage competition between the U.S. and China is by meeting face-to-face. It's a win for diplomacy. Speaking of, here's Secretary of State Antony Blinken, America's top diplomat, watching Biden call Xi Jinping a dictator.
Mr. President, after today, would you still refer to President Xi as a dictator? This is a term that you used earlier this year.
Well, look, he is. I mean, he's a dictator in the sense that he is the guy who runs a country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government totally different than ours.
I now truly know what Schadenfreude means. Back to you, America Uncovered's Chris Chappell. Thanks, China Uncensored's Chris Chappell. Man, I'm so much more handsome than that guy. While APEC was in San Francisco, activists protested environmental and working conditions, corporate profits, the Israel-Hamas conflict, and the Cheesecake Factory getting rid of its mashed potato omelet. Okay, they didn't actually protest that last thing, but they should have. It was mashed potatoes in an omelet. It may not be equity and world peace, but it sure tasted like it. Something notably absent on the streets of San Francisco ahead of the APEC summit were the homeless, who miraculously disappeared before world leaders arrived. For a full breakdown on that story, check out this video. Leaders essentially sweeping homeless people under the rug said they wanted to look good for company and give their guests the authentic San Francisco experience. And they succeeded, because a Czech news crew covering APEC was robbed, so yes, they did indeed get the authentic San Francisco experience. And after the break, LA traffic gets even worse. Welcome back. A massive fire damaged parts of the I-10 in Los Angeles and closed sections of the major freeway indefinitely. Authorities say the fire was set intentionally. So traffic will be a nightmare, no one will be able to get to work on time, the atmosphere will be polluted, and everyone will wonder how LA, one of the largest cities on the planet, doesn't have a moderately decent mass transit system already. So it's just like every other week in LA. There's no timetable on when repairs will be made and the freeway will be operational again. Unless, of course, APEC announces it's coming to Los Angeles. Then, like San Francisco is magically able to, Los Angeles will fix this problem immediately. For about a week. Speaking of cars on highways, part of President Biden's massive infrastructure bill passed in 2021 includes a measure to install advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology that would limit or prevent vehicle operation if the car detects impaired or drunk driving. Many are calling this a kill switch, and some say it would be controlled by police or the government. But as you can see here in the bill itself, it describes it as automatic, and says it would passively monitor the performance of a driver of a motor vehicle to accurately identify whether that driver may be impaired. So while the government won't be in direct control of your vehicle, it is still a bit frightening because how will they determine what constitutes being impaired? Not sure I'd trust this guy as an expert on the topic. A large pro-Israel crowd marched in Washington, D.C. And as you'd expect from any conversation around Israel, it was cordial and uneventful. Just kidding, the next day, Capitol Police clashed with 150 anti-war activists they say were illegally and violently protesting, forcing members of the DNC to evacuate. Because you have to choose one side or the other and fight about it. Nuance isn't allowed in this conversation, even from the people most affected by it. Here's a Palestinian man in Gaza explaining what he's gone through to Al Jazeera. Reminder, Qatari state-funded media.
يعني مسح مربع بحاله فوق ال 15 20 دار. هذا منطق، هذا عمل انساني، هذا عمل اجرامي. وبعدين بالنسبه للمقاومه اللي بتيجي بتخبى بين الناس، ليش تخبى بين الناس؟ يروح في جهنم يتخبى.
يعني هذه شهادات من المواطنين.
He expresses frustration with Israel destroying his home, but the second he condemns Hamas for using them as human shields, it's time to cut to commercials? I hope the commercial was Xanax, because considering how everyone's covering this, we're gonna need it. Speaking of people that can go to hell, Congress. The ever-looming government shutdown is still looming. House Speaker Mike Johnson gained support from Democrats with a funding plan that didn't include steep spending cuts. This, however, upset several Republicans. The bill passed overwhelmingly in the House and in the Senate, but 93 House Republicans voted against it. Johnson's plan is a two-step package that would fund some parts of the government through January 19th and other parts through February 2nd. So essentially, it won't solve the issue, it'll just give Congress more time to solve the issue. Because Congress is more concerned with fighting than leading. And when I say fighting, I mean that literally. Here's Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin almost getting into a fist fight with Teamster General President Sean M. O'Brien.
If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big guy.
Oh, stop it.
Is that your solution every poll?
No, sit down.
Sorry, Eric,
Sit down. Look at you. You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit
Active.
Oh, okay.
Nice try keeping the peace, Bernie. But we need a leader that can whip Congress into shape and lay the smackdown on all these jabronis. Wow, maybe The Rock should be president. President The Rock. It'd be great because we all love watching a good death match. A topic I go into in the latest episode of my new segment, Deep Thoughts While Gaming. Check it out. An America Uncovered wouldn't exist without your support. Click that orange button to support us on Patreon. All it takes is $1 an episode, and you can set a monthly limit. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.